Chapter 90. I don't believe he would die hereafter. Hearing this, Su Shu's face turned even paler and her brows furrowed tightly. After a few minutes of silence, she forcefully swung her backpack behind her, tied her ponytail tighter, and turned to stride deeper into the mountain forest. Zhao Kang was startled, grabbing her arm. "Young lady, wait a moment. It's too dangerous to go in like this." Su Shu said, "No matter how dangerous, I have to go in and find him. I don't believe that Tang Zelen would die here." "No, you came with me. I can't let you go into an even more dangerous place. Stay here and behave." At such a moment, Zhao Kang absolutely could not allow her, a young girl, to venture into the mountains alone. Even if searching for someone was dangerous, that was a matter for them as soldiers. They weren't dead yet. There was no need for her to intervene. Su Shu frowned and said, "Group Captain Zhao, I don't mean to cause you trouble. The people here need you, but I am more worried about him. I want to go and check. I won't be in any danger." "That's still not possible." Zhao Kang could see that this young lady was stubborn. If he didn't allow her to search, she definitely wouldn't give up easily. He looked around and nodded at a few warriors who looked robust and agile, then turned back to Su Shu and said, "Let's go together." "Okay." Su Shu didn't refuse. She understood that they had come to the mountains to search for the missing person. Whether she was there or not, they would still go to look for Tang Zelen. Thus, without any objection, she decisively followed the pace of Zhao Kang and his men. The medic stayed with the villagers, as there were more injured people there. To reduce the danger for those heading into the mountains, he handed the last 2 bottles of snake venom serum to Group Captain Zhao before they left. "We brought it when we came to offer disaster relief, but there's unfortunately too little in the hospital's inventory. It's only these 2 bottles. In case of an emergency, they might buy us some time. Better than nothing, I suppose." The search and rescue team then split into 2 groups, one to lead the found villagers down the mountain, and the other to bring the tools and support the villagers in leading them to nearby places where people might be. Su Shu was highly alert, scrupulously scanning her surroundings for any slight clue. Searching for people in the deep forest was very difficult. Time passed by the second, and they carefully inspected the area they had come through without finding any useful trace. Group Captain Zhao held his temper in check and continued to encourage everyone to stay focused and search again. Not only did they need to successfully find the missing people to complete their mission, but they also needed to carefully watch for any dangers underfoot or in the bushes, recalling the scenes of encirclement by snakes described by the villagers. It was impossible for anyone present not to be a bit worried. Right now, all they could do was to be extra cautious. Halfway through the journey, Su Shu attentively searched for any minute clues when suddenly, the ring on her middle finger became burning hot. She exclaimed in shock due to the sudden heat, causing Group Captain Zhao, walking ahead, to jump and look back. "Miss Su, what's wrong?" "It's nothing, I just twisted my ankle." "It's tough to walk in the forest, be careful. If you encounter any poisonous snakes or anything, don't panic, just shout for me." "Yes, Group Captain Zhao." "Then let's continue. Everyone be extra careful with your footing." "Yes." A ring of warriors responded from behind Su Shu. Su Shu regained her composure and followed behind Zhao Kang. When others weren't paying attention, she quietly glanced at the ring on her finger, feeling suppressed. The shape hadn't changed. The color hadn't either, except for the temperature being a bit too high, making it feel like she was wearing a scorching iron fist. Was there a problem inside the space? Or what? She was unsure, so she secretly concentrated to inspect the situation within her space and felt that there was no difference from before. She thought it shouldn't be an issue with the space, especially since she hadn't collected anything recently, except for the little peach tree. But what sort of storm could a tree stir up? She didn't think that was the case. If it wasn't this, and it wasn't that, then what exactly was the problem? As she walked along, lost in thought, she didn't notice the protruding tree root in her path and accidentally tripped over it. A young warrior behind her quickly grabbed her. After steadying herself, Su Shu said gratefully, "Thank you." The worried warrior said, "Sister-in-law, we will find them." Su Shu paused, and the warrior, noticed by her, blushed slightly. It had been a long time since she had heard anyone call her sister-in-law. By the time Su Shu realized it, her face couldn't help but flush a bit too. To join them on the mountain, she had told a little lie, claiming to be Tang Zelin's fiancé. Now, hearing the warrior calling her sister-in-law, even she felt her cheeks burning fiercely. Embarrassed, she responded, "We will find them." This unexpected incident had interrupted her thoughts, and it wasn't until she had walked for a while that she abruptly remembered the matter of the ring. But now, the ring on her hand was no longer hot, and perhaps that was why she hadn't thought of it. Suddenly stopping, she secretly touched the ring to feel its temperature and looked back along the path she had come, her eyes thoughtful. The ring was not hot, but it had clearly been scorching a moment ago. Why? After thinking for a while, she suddenly started walking back, and a warrior followed behind her, somewhat confusedly passing by her side. When someone saw her turning back, they couldn't help but ask, "Sister-in-law, what's wrong?" Su Shu said, "I'm going to check something. I'll be right back." Seeing this, the warrior following behind said, "Let me accompany you then. It's dangerous to straggle behind." "Thank you." Su Shu felt she might be overthinking it, but perhaps her guess was wrong. She secretly sensed the ring's temperature and returned to the spot where it had become hot earlier and stood still. The warrior behind her looked around and asked, "Is there something wrong here?" Surrounded by forest with no branches broken by external forces or anything particularly unusual, the area didn't seem like a place where someone could be. Su Shu didn't speak, waiting for a while. Maybe she was overthinking things, and just as she decided to leave after having stood there in vain, suddenly, the ring heated up again. There must be something wrong with this place, Su Shu thought. Whatever the problem was, her ring wouldn't react randomly. There must be some situation nearby or around this area. Su Shu looked like she was searching for something. The warrior beside her, sensing something amiss, shouted to the people ahead to call the other teammates back. Group Captain Zhao, returning with his team, saw Su Shu intensely searching for something, and immediately ordered everyone to thoroughly search the nearby area to see if there was any further information. Yes, all at once, they spread out in a circular pattern. Everyone searched the nearby trees and shrubs. Su Shu squinted, distinguishing between the temperatures at different spots as she searched. Although the difference was subtle, she still felt a variation in intensity. She thought, if the ring grew hot in this area, perhaps the closer she was to the target, the hotter it would get. Zhao Kang had observed Su Shu searching for items before and had a strange feeling in his heart. He always felt that the way she searched for things was as though she knew exactly what to do, gradually moving from the left to the right, and sometimes even disregarding safety to venture deeper into the area. Zhao Kang narrowed his eyes in thought. Then after a short moment, he signaled to the others to follow him over. And so, led by Su Shu's inexplicable searching method, everyone began a thorough, carpet-style search in the vicinity. As the temperature of the ring grew hotter, Su Shu became increasingly anxious. She didn't know what the scorching ring was leading her to find. She secretly hoped it was guiding her to find Tang Zelin, so her heart was almost in her throat. Zhao Kang, with a dagger in hand, protected her as they moved. The forest was too dense, and it was easy to get scratched by brambles. Seeing that she was totally focused on the search and not even paying attention to the cuts on her arm, he tried to clear the path ahead of her as much as he could. Su Shu noticed this and couldn't help but feel grateful. After searching for about 15 minutes, Su Shu suddenly stopped. The group captain and the others also halted and turned their attention toward Su Shu. She felt as though the middle finger that bore the ring was about to burn off, and the searing heat was even laced with sharp, needle-like pain. This must be the place. She stood still, turning to look around. Having reached this point, her intuition told her that Tang Zelen must be nearby. Inexplicably, she just felt that he was close. Zhao Kang said, "Miss Su, do you think it's here?" "I don't know, but this place feels different from the others." Indeed, the place did feel different to her, with her fingertip feeling as if it was about to burn off. Strangely, she could only endure it, as the ring would not come off no matter how much she tried. But she couldn't tell Zhao Kang that she was finding people by the temperature of the ring's space. She could only mention her feeling. Feelings, mysterious and unfathomable, always seem to make sense whatever you say. Within the search and rescue team, she was the only woman, and it's often said that women have more developed sixth senses. Therefore, Zhao Kang did not question her further and immediately asked everyone to search carefully and closely in the nearby area. And most importantly, stay safe. If someone truly disappeared here, it would mean this place is even more dangerous. Caution is paramount. While everyone was wholeheartedly searching for any possible clues, someone suddenly shouted, "Come quick! There seems to be someone here." Su Shu quickly looked up and rushed over upon hearing the news, with the others following as fast as they could. Indeed, in the direction pointed by the warrior's hand, there was a deep pit area hidden behind two large trees. If it were not for the warrior's attentiveness, this spot could have easily been missed due to the tree roots on the ground, causing someone to trip and fall in. Everyone gathered around, and without a word, Zhao Kang grasped the vines on the edge of the pit, using them to lower himself down to the person in distress. He checked the neck for a pulse and then shouted up, "They're alive! Throw down a rope." From where Su Shu stood, she couldn't see the face of the person below and was unable to confirm if it was Tang Zelen. She also wanted to go down and check, but the space below was already too cramped for a third person. Zhao Kang examined the person's body for severe injuries that would prevent moving them. Finding none, he gently tapped the person on the cheek with a bit of force. "Hey there, wake up, can you hear me speaking?" After asking several times, the person finally managed to open their eyes weakly. Sudden light made it difficult to bear, and they could only vaguely see a blurred face. Their consciousness was still not fully clear, but subconsciously they felt that they might have been rescued. Her lips moved as she struggled to utter a few words. There are still people. Below." "Folks, what did you say? There are still people." "There are people, save." "All right, don't talk now. Rest assured we will safely take you out. Don't talk and conserve your energy. Try not to sleep." Zhao Kang directed his soldiers to work together to carry the person up. No sooner had the man been lifted up than Su Shu hurried over to check if he was Tang Zelen. With high hopes she approached and saw a stranger's face. Her heart fiercely skipped a beat. It wasn't him, he was still not found. Su Shu frowned, turning around to search more diligently nearby. Since coming up from below, Zhao Kang arranged for his people to take the villager back for immediate treatment, leaving everyone else down to study with him on how to rescue the others. Su Shu was called back by him, and he shared what that man had just mentioned. "Here's the situation. Among the people who fled in this direction, including your fiancé, there were 5 people in total. We have only found one so far. According to him, there are still people below, but he didn't specify how many or which / below. / Thus, this spot is very dangerous now. For safety's sake, Miss Su, you can't act alone. You must follow the group's arrangements. Can you do that?" Su Shu nodded. "I can, I just want to find him and not trouble you all." As long as she could find Tang Zelen, she didn't care about the method, just as long as the person was found. Knowing there were people nearby, everyone was rejuvenated with a purpose, and after a serious search, finally located a place where survivors might be. Within a fissure caused by a mountain fracture, the spot was too narrow and dark to see clearly whether there were people below, nor how many. Seeing this situation, everyone's heart could not help but worry for those in danger. This was the worst case, and even more hazardous. The current seismic activity made it extremely hard to predict the geological conditions here, and the difficulty of the rescue had suddenly increased manifold. Standing beside the fissure, Su Shu thought about the possibility of Tang Zelen being down there and felt her fingers trembling. Su Shu bravely moved closer to the edge of the fissure when Zhao Kang grabbed her arm and chided, "What are you doing? This place is so dangerous. Do you want to tumble in as well?" "Of course not. I just want to get closer and see if he's down there." Zhao Kang frowned. "You don't need to worry about these things, we're here." Saying so, he had someone shout into the fissure. The visibility below was extremely low. If someone responded from below, that would be good. A voice would allow for more precise localization and make the rescue slightly easier. If there was no response, they would have to descend using ropes to explore, and if that were the case, the danger was too high. Su Shu knew that the more such times arose, the more she needed to stay calm. Hence, upon Zhao Kang's single reminder, she promptly switched herself to a calm mode and discussed with him the best approach for the rescue. This move not only comforted Zhao Kang, but also surprised him. This young lady, despite her youthful age, discussed rescue plans with him in all seriousness, her bright, sparkling eyes exceptionally captivating. Her fiancé might be hanging between life and death at the moment, yet unlike others, she was neither trembling with fear nor weeping uncontrollably. Instead, she was calmer than before while searching for people. When it was confirmed that there were voices responding from below, she could control her excitement swiftly and discuss the best rescue plan with him, using rational judgment. Zhao Kang couldn't help but feel that her fiancé, a fellow soldier, was indeed fortunate. For military personnel like them, what they needed most was someone like Su Shu, who seemed gentle, yet could firmly shoulder responsibilities and burdens at crucial moments. Zhao Kang looked into her eyes and said earnestly, "Whether he is alive or dead, rest assured I will bring him back." Su Shu, without any hesitation, affirmed resolutely, "He must be alive." She refused to believe that her rebirth was to witness Tang Zelen's death. If fate dared play such a cruel trick on her, she would defy heaven itself. Really fine. Tang Zelen's eyes, like powerful radars, swept over her casually, and she felt as if there was nowhere to hide. He turned around, soothing her gently, "Don't be scared, I'm here." "Okay." Su Shu stepped back and whispered to the little Snake King. "How did you know?" She really hadn't expected that just as the thought crossed her mind, the little Snake King would guess it. The little Snake King stared at the stone gate, seriously observing for a while before speaking solemnly. "You don't need to go in, just take me into your space. I have a way for you to get inside." "You have a way?" "Yes, take me into space. Be cautious. We don't know what lies behind this gate. The atmosphere seems off. Be careful." Su Shu took the little Snake King into her space and waited for almost 5 or 6 minutes. Tang Zelen and the others still couldn't find a way to open the stone gate. Suddenly, the heat from the ring on Su Shu's finger scorched her. Thinking of what the little Snake King had said earlier, Su Shu's thought flickered, and a blood bead rolled out into her palm. The blood bead, intertwined like 2 strips of dark and light crimson satin, rolled in her palm. Was this the method the little Snake King had for opening the stone gate? Su Shu gently touched the blood bead in her palm. It felt elastic, and she contemplated the colors within. If this was another kind of yin-yang blood, she wondered whose blood it might be. In her space, only the little red snake was a female. So, which one of the two, the little Snake King or the fox, could the other contributor be? With no time for further thought, Su Shu held the blood bead and walked straight to the stone gate. Without considering whether it would work or not, she smashed the blood bead against the stone gate with the palm of her hand. Before Tang Zulin could react and reach out to grab her arm, a deep, thunderous boom echoed through the cave. "Step back." Tang Zulin's complexion changed, and he quickly instructed everyone to retreat, while he, of course, also dragged his wife away from the front of the stone gate. The stone gate shook with a thunderous rumble as it opened, stirring up a cloud of dust and smoke. At last it opened. Tang Zulin's face turned slightly pale. He didn't know what to say anymore. He came to understand that Susha was really headstrong. The more he asked her to be cautious, the more she would rush forward. Susha's innocent big eyes looked at him, pointing to the stone gate. "It's open." Tang Zulin took a deep breath and glared at her. The stone gate swung open. Before the gate opened, everyone thought something strange might suddenly emerge from behind it. But to their surprise, when the gate opened, what appeared was a long corridor. The floor, tiled with porcelain, bore bloodstains that had dried up. How can this be? Everyone couldn't help but stand stunned at the entrance of the stone gate. How could such an ancient cave lead to such a modern corridor once open? The group exchanged perplexed glances. "Third Master, this place is too strange. Should I have someone send you back?" "No, I'll go in with you all. If anything happens to me, it's not your concern. If there's truly danger, don't bother about me. I must go in," declared Third Master Peng firmly as he spied a familiar symbol on the wall ahead. A sickle shape, drawn on the left wall with fresh blood. This style of drawing was unique to one person. Li Bengsun must be inside. Upon seeing a clue, everyone finally felt a bit of relief. After circling around for so long, finally, there was a lead. It was inevitably invigorating. "Let's be alert, move out," Tang Zulin said and took the lead into the stone gate. Susha followed behind, and as her back foot crossed the threshold, she clearly saw the red needle on the danger meter snap focus. Once it was confirmed that the person below the crack was still conscious, Group Captain Zhe led his team to locate the direction of the sound and descended the rope to rescue. Susha, naturally, was kept away from the danger. As long as it was confirmed the person was still alive, the rescue for Zhe Keng and his team became much less difficult, and it didn't take long for the first two people who responded to be brought up. One was a villager, and the other was dressed in expensive sportswear. Seeing the corner of the clothing, Susha hurried forward. "Tang Zulin." Yuan Ze's lips were chapped, parched from hunger below, originally thinking his life would end today in this god-forsaken place. Who would have thought that he could be found just before death? Truly, the heavens had not forsaken Yuan Ze. He had been rescued, but his brother Tang Zulin was still below. Speaking was difficult for him. He could only try hard to point downwards with his finger. Zhe Keng asked, "Is there still someone below?" Yuan Ze nodded his head. "Don't worry, we'll rescue them as well." Zhe Keng put Yuan Ze down and planned to continue the rescue. Susha, who was right behind him, came over to identify the person. Upon hearing his boss's name from someone else, Yuan Ze was first startled, then confused, and later his eyes filled with curiosity. "It's not Tang Zulin." Susha, who had mistaken the person, turned pale. Without the time to figure out the meaning behind Yuan Ze's gaze, she turned back to the edge of the crack. "Are there still others below who haven't been brought up?" As Zhe Keng was strapping the rope to his body, he nodded and said, "Yes, there's still someone below. It should be the fiancé you're looking for. Stay away from here, be careful not to fall, and don't worry, we'll bring your fiancé back to you." "Chum, be careful, Group Captain Zhe. You can count on it." As the words fell, Zhe Keng descended the rope with the help of the warriors, and soon he vanished into the shadows. Sasha clasped her nervously intertwined hands by the shore, her hands coming together in prayer for Tang Zulan's safety from time to time. He must return safely, he must. Not far behind her, Yuan Zhe, who was now lying on a stretcher and had drunk a few sips of water to moisten his throat, let the warriors beside him check his injuries while he watched Sasha's back from afar, full of speculation. He hadn't misheard, had he? What did that group captain tell this lady? That they would bring your fiancé back. Fiancé? Yuan Zhe blinked. Had she not rushed over calling him Tang Zulan earlier? Did she know his boss? Was she his boss's fiancé? Yuan Zhe couldn't wrap his head around this twist. If the boss had a fiancé, then why would he go home for matchmaking? Constantly tormented by his old man and Uncle Tang, and even dragged him out as a shield. Yuan Zhe just looked at Sasha, full of questions. Unfortunately, he had exhausted all his strength below, and now he felt as if he was paralyzed everywhere except in his mind. Damn it, Yuan Zhe had never been stuck in tree roots and crevices for such a long time in his life. And how was the boss doing now? Since yesterday, it had been pitch black below, where he could only hear voices coming up from time to time without being able to see how he was. Tang Zulan always said that it was nothing serious, but being stuck above, he couldn't help but believe. At first, he had the energy to curse at everything, but eventually, even the cursing took all his energy. To conserve energy, the two of them barely talked except to affirm each other's safety. He asked Tang Zulan, "In life we are brothers, in death let's be companions on the Yellow Springs Road." Tang Zulan didn't even respond to his comment, much calmer than him. A person who might be about to die, besides observing the surrounding conditions and figuring out how to escape, still had the leisure to explain the terrain and topography of Peng Mountain to him. Then he made a conclusive judgment. After the aftershocks of this sudden earthquake, there should be no larger earthquakes. They were trapped here, but it wasn't impossible to escape. At first, Yuan Zhe thought that his big brother must have some magic solution. But after waiting for a long time and seeing no movement below, Yuan Zhe began to get nervous and asked Tang Zulan several times about his condition. He asked repeatedly until Tang Zulan got annoyed and reluctantly revealed the truth. "My leg is injured." With these three words uttered so casually by Tang Zulan, "My leg is injured," as if it was nothing serious, but who was Yuan Zhe? He was the brother who had been hanging around with Tang Zulan since they were wearing split pants as toddlers. Others may not know what kind of temper Tang Zulan had, but how could he not know? If his leg was just hurt and he was Tang Zulan, he could hop on one leg and stubbornly fight to the end. So, if it was just an injury, what was it really? Therefore, there must be more to it than just an injured leg for Tang Zulan down there. Yuan Zhe was worried, struggling hard to extricate himself and rescue Tang Zulan, but after exhausting himself several times, Tang Zulan stopped him. "Stay still up there. What if you shake something loose and it falls and hits me?" With that one sentence, Yuan Zhe didn't dare to move. In fact, he knew Tang Zulan wanted him to conserve strength and wait for rescue. In this remote mountainous area, they had initially run in to lure the enemy as a trap to save people, but who knew whether those people were still alive, and even if they were, whether they would have the courage to come back into the mountain to rescue them. Yuan Zhe wasn't holding out much hope. Tang Zulan meant that it was better to believe that there was hope than to believe there was none. If one believed there was no hope, their will to live wouldn't last a few days. Tang Zulan analyzed the impact of the earthquake, believing that if it caused a certain level of disaster, the Zhengdong government and military would inevitably get involved, and by then, they would still have a chance of being rescued. All they had to do was to conserve energy and wait. That's what he said to Yuan Zhe, but on the other hand, he had been considering all sorts of plans to get out of danger. When he heard voices searching for people in the darkness above, his eyes snapped open in mild surprise. He hadn't expected the Peng Mountain region's military response to be so fast and efficient, much ahead of his original estimate. Impressive. Author Zulun, you're about to meet the King of Hell and you're still admiring others. After Yuan Zhe was rescued, Tang Zelin calmly waited below. Soon after, a thick voice rose beside him. Tang Zelin. It's me. Zhao Kang grasped the rope with one hand and swept around with a flashlight in the other. Tang Zelin turned his head away from the suddenly bright light. Only after Zhao Kang surveyed the surroundings did he understand why the other had been lying there, unable to move. The place where Tang Zelin had fallen was exactly where the mountain had split open, tearing out a piece just big enough for a person to move around a little. If he moved too much, he could easily fall down further. Zhao Kang looked at Tang Zelin's right lower leg, injured. Serious? Tang Zelin smiled faintly and said, I'm afraid you'll have to trouble yourselves to pull me up. In other words, apart from his leg injury, other parts of him might also be hurt. Zhao Kang instantly understood and looked up to inform the others who had come down with him. Next, it was time for everyone to work together to figure out the best way to pull Tang Zelin up. Things seemed simple, but when it came to the actual operation, that's when they realized the difficulties were numerous. Tang Zelin, because of his serious injuries, couldn't cooperate with them on his own, so the full weight had to be carried by them to bring him up. Fortunately, Zhao Kang and his soldiers were all in excellent physical condition, and with united effort, it took them almost half a day to finally rescue Tang Zelin. It was precisely because of this process that Zhao Kang had great admiration for this comrade in arms, who was also a soldier. Given his injuries and the location, an ordinary person's willpower would have already collapsed. Even if their willpower didn't collapse, maintaining an immobile posture in that place and trying to avoid triggering a secondary collapse of the mountain was no easy task. This man's willpower was not like that of ordinary people. Before Tang Zelin was rescued, Su Shu was filled with various anxieties and unease. However, once he actually had been brought up, she hesitated. What was she hesitating about? It was only because she had taken it upon herself to say she was his fiancée that she could break the rules and come to the mountain to find him. If she were to rush over to him, would that scare him? The devil only knows when he suddenly ended up with a fiancée. She was the one who had popped up out of nowhere. In her past life, she was so familiar with him. In this life, however, he was so strange to her. Sighed hurt. It was true that reason dictated hesitation, but reason was reason, and impulse was impulse. Su Shu might be able to stay calm and composed in the face of other people and events. But when it came to Tang Zelin, it was nothing but impulse. Since her rebirth, there hadn't been a single time in his presence where she could maintain a perfect image. Her facade always crumbled. The more she wanted to appear calm and collected, the more panicked and flustered she became in front of him. After all, it wasn't the first or second time she acted impulsively. This one time wouldn't make a difference. Are you okay? Tang Zelin was lifted from the darkness, with a piece of clothing covering his eyes to prevent the sunlight from hurting his eyes. Because he couldn't see, he had to rely on his hearing to assess his surroundings, including throughout the rescue process. He tried his best to cooperate, even though every movement sent sharp pain through his body. But no one knew better than him how to move to avoid further injury to himself. Fortunately, he and they had cooperated perfectly. Light filtered through the fabric of the clothing, letting him know he had been safely brought to the ground. Surviving death was commonplace for him. Death had been a constant companion, and he had long grown accustomed to it. He thought to himself, it seemed King Yama wasn't ready to take him just yet. While he was internally amused by the thought, a gentle and cautious voice suddenly rose by his ear, causing him to startle. The dampness was heavy in the mountains and forests, filled with the scents of grasses and trees. A woman's unexpected voice made Tang Zelen feel a sense of familiarity. It seemed he had heard it somewhere before. Seeing that he hadn't responded for a while, Su Shu, anxious, turned to Zhao Kang and asked, "Group Captain Zhao, is he okay?" Zhao Kang said, "His injuries are serious, but they should not be life-threatening. Miss Su, don't worry, we're heading down the mountain now. The injuries your fiancé has suffered can't be treated here, but there will be medicine in the village." Okay. It was good that Tang Zelen wasn't in mortal danger, better than anything else. Su Shu squatted beside him and gently took Tang Zelen's hand that was at his side. Beneath the clothing that covered him, Tang Zelen's tightly closed eyelids unexpectedly trembled. He did not open his eyes, but he was slightly shocked inside. Someone had taken his hand, and by touch, he knew it was a woman's hand. How come was that query just now addressed to him? He had thought what? If his memory wasn't so poor, had Group Captain Zhao just now referred to this woman as your fiancé? If that was the case of a fiancé, he guessed she probably mistook him for someone else. For some reason, he felt a faint disappointment in his heart. It turned out she wasn't here for him. Perhaps she was a family member of the villager who had encountered danger. Quietly, he moved slightly and gently withdrew his hand from the soft palm of the woman. The person beside him suddenly moved. Su Shu was startled and looked down at Tang Zelen's rough and scratched hand. "You!" She had just opened her mouth when Tang Zelen interrupted her and told her the truth. "I'm sorry, I am not your fiancé. I apologize, he has already met with misfortune." She could mistake him for someone else, but he couldn't deceive her, let alone give her hope. Amongst the 3 villagers who had fled with them, one unfortunately succumbed. He had failed to protect everyone. It was his fault. He didn't want to give others hope, only to end in disappointment. Although for a split second, he indeed felt warmth in his heart due to her concerned inquiry. Standing awkwardly next to him, Su Shu, and the 2 warriors carrying the stretcher in front and behind, felt sorry for her and even comforted her in extremely soft voices. The patient might be delirious from the injury and talking nonsense. Don't take it to heart. Su Shu's face turned bright red with embarrassment. They might as well not have comforted her. It was clearly she who had caused trouble by claiming a relationship recklessly. Everyone's eyes turned towards her, sympathizing, and she was stuck between a rock and a hard place. To say yes was not right, afraid Tang Zelen would expose the lie. To say no was also not right. What should she do? Su Shu. Her bright eyes blinked. Since it was already awkward, she wasn't afraid of the embarrassment lasting till the end. She was also annoyed inside at Tang Zelen. When did he pick the wrong time to speak? Out of all things, he had to say he wasn't her fiancé, which was like a slap to her face. Instantly pretending to be fiercely angry, she scolded, "Speak less, focus on your body first, you should talk less nonsense when you're injured. If you're reluctant, say it later. Being alive is good enough." Her demeanor resembled that of a minor spat between lovers, and everyone chuckled softly, thinking about how she had come from afar to save someone, only to have the man tell her that her man had met with disaster. Anyone would be upset to hear such words. Tang Zelen felt somewhat helpless as that cold little hand once again grasped his wrist. The woman's tone seemed to carry a hint of irritation. All right, maybe telling her these cruel facts now would be too harsh for others. Let the mistake go, and when they got back to the village and uncovered the cloth from his face, She would have to accept the cruel reality once she saw who he was. Tang Zelen, who couldn't help feeling pity, moved his lips, hesitated, but eventually held back the cruel truth. Seeing that he did not object, Su Shu breathed a huge sigh of relief inside. Although everyone would find out sooner or later, she didn't want it to be now. Yuan Zio and another rescued villager were walking ahead. Tang Zelen was at the back, and Su Shu was beside him, occasionally helping or assisting with carrying. Tang Zelen could always smell a faint scent belonging to a woman. Knowing she had nothing to do with him, he couldn't help but feel that having someone by his side to comfort and take care of him in times of danger was strangely endearing. Therefore, throughout the journey, Tang Zelen did not say another word. When going downhill, Su Shu, in an effort to help, nearly tripped again. The young warrior behind carrying Tang Zelen said, "Be careful, Sister Su." "All right, sorry, didn't mean to make you laugh," Su Shu responded embarrassingly with a smile. The two people before and after couldn't help but smile. Finding the person and completing the mission made everyone happy. Though they only brought back 4 survivors, it was good enough. Perhaps because they had found the person, everyone's spirits were no longer tense, and they relaxed a lot. Along the way, they would occasionally make self-deprecating jokes to relieve the earlier tension. Su Shu came back to her senses and touched Tang Zelen's hand to check the temperature, which was fine. The next second, she shivered all over. She didn't expect that Tang Zelen, lying on the stretcher, would actually hold her hand. The journey down the mountain was no easy feat. Startled by Su Shu's sudden grip, the warrior quickly withdrew his hand and, with nervousness evident, placed it by his side and followed beside her. Inside his chest, his heart thumped wildly. He didn't understand what came over him. He had simply gripped her hand in return, but that alone had excited her to this degree. How embarrassing. By the time they circled from the inside to the front, the villagers who had been injured were no longer there, suggesting that they had successfully been moved deeper into the mountain for treatment. Zhao Kang led the team. Now, all they had to do was to escort Tang Zelen, Yuan Zio, and their 2 companions down the mountain. The rescue operation for Peng Village could finally start on a good note. However, there's no accounting for the uncertainties of nature. A straightforward task met an unexpected turn at the most crucial moment. As the team reached the boundary between passing 2 Cliffs Mountain and the Front Mountain, they encountered large patches of Lingjai ground, just like the ones the villagers had come across the day before. The mushrooms were indeed top-grade Lingjai, but surrounding them, countless poisonous snakes had gathered, blocking their way out. The disturbance was first noticed by the warrior scouting ahead. "Not good, there are snakes." The group immediately halted, not daring to take any rash actions. Anxious, Group Captain Zhao Kang treaded carefully so as not to disturb the snakes, quietly moving up from behind. Around a dozen warriors, along with the injured and Su Shu, started to slowly converge towards the center. Tang Zelen, lying on the stretcher, heard the mention of snakes and, disregarding the pain in his arm, stretched his hand to remove the piece of clothing covering his face. He then tapped the warrior supporting the stretcher behind him, signaling to be put down. The younger warrior felt uneasy. Zelen said, "Let me down first, and do you have a dagger? Give me one." Hearing his request for a dagger, the warrior hesitated to act on his own. The ones at the back signaled those in front, and those in front signaled to their brothers further ahead, until finally, someone at Zhao Kang's side leaned in to inquire in his ear. "Group Captain, the commanding officer at the back is asking for a dagger." Rank-wise among all those present, Tang Zelen held the highest military rank, so calling him commanding officer was not inappropriate. However, Tang Zelen was from Province B, while they were from Province E, so naturally, they sought direction from their own group captain, Zhao Kang. Zhao Kang looked back, making eye contact with Tang Zelen, who was struggling to raise his head on the stretcher. "Group Captain Zhao, is there a swarm of snakes? Everyone is coming together. Let's not do anything rash just yet. They are very dangerous." Zhao Kang kept a careful watch on the situation ahead, retreating a few steps to come to Zelen's side. "Is this the same swarm you encountered yesterday? Don't act on impulse. Have everyone hold their positions for now. Do you have any knowledge of this?" Zhao Kang had also never seen such a spectacle before. The safety of the villagers they were rescuing was at stake, and everyone knew it. It was impossible not to worry. He immediately commanded everyone to hold their positions. The discipline and organization of soldiers are always the strongest. Because of this, Tang Zelen felt somewhat relieved. Although danger loomed, at least it wouldn't repeat the chaos of the previous day when some people, unable to hold their nerve, tried to escape in a panic, provoking the snakes and putting everyone in jeopardy. Upon reflection, Tang Zelen felt that the sudden appearance of this batch of snakes in the Between Cliffs mountain at Peng village was highly unusual. He had encountered poisonous snakes before, but he had never seen a swarm guarding such a vast expanse of Lingjai. After reviewing all the images he had seen, he finally noticed something peculiar. The snakes surrounding the top-grade blood Ganoderma in the very center of the Lingjai ground seemed to have a color that was more vivid than those on the outside. The brighter the color of the snake's body, the more potent its venom. If he was not mistaken, could there be a small snake coiled around the base of that top-grade Lingjai? Could it be? Tang Zelen wanted to lift his head slightly to see the situation ahead, but after struggling for a bit, he suddenly felt a pair of gentle hands carefully supporting him from behind. Su Shu gently lifted his shoulders from behind, not daring to use much force, for fear of accidentally hurting him. Unable to turn his head, Tang Zelen naturally couldn't see the girl behind him. Besides, he wasn't in the mood to look back. His vision was excellent, but unfortunately he was too weak now, his body lacking strength and his sight somewhat blurry. "Is there a telescope?" "Bring over the telescope," Zhao Kang said in a low voice. Soon the telescope was passed forward, and Tang Zelen held it with one hand, his arm trembling. Seeing this, Su Shu behind him reached out to help steady his hand, positioning the telescope in front of his eyes. "Thank you," he said softly. Su Shu crouched on the ground, steady behind him, silent. "What do you want to see?" asked Zhao Kang, who also crouched beside him. Tang Zelen said, "Check if there's anything unusual around that best Lingjai." "Unusual?" Zhao Kang, too, grabbed a telescope and looked ahead, intermittently taking it down to confirm the position before looking through the lens again. Just as expected. After a while, Tang Zelen suddenly spoke. "What, did you find something?" "At the root of that Lingjai, there's a little red snake as thick as a thumb. Do you see it?" Zhao Kang picked up the telescope again and looked carefully, nodding after a while. "It seems like there is one coiled around it." Putting down the telescope, Tang Zelen took deep breaths, paused to recover some strength before he continued. "In Peng villages Between Cliffs mountain, there are many treasures. The rule passed down in the village is that everything can be taken except for Lingjai." "What do you mean?" "Don't alarm that little snake, and let's slowly avoid the snake group." "Will that work?" "I don't know. The reason we were attacked by the snake group yesterday was partly because someone couldn't withstand the psychological pressure and ran out first, startling the snake group. Moreover, I have a somewhat fuzzy impression that during the attack, there seemed to be a red snake standing tall above the Lingjai." He couldn't be sure now if that little red snake, which seemed like the leader, was the same one that was currently coiled at the root of the Lingjai. But after replaying all the images in his mind, that fleeting scene was the most peculiar. Zhao Kang looked again at that little red snake they were discussing, still coiled as if it was asleep. A strangely chilling scene. If we retreat without alarming them, do you think the route is viable? Tang Zelen coughed, and a hand immediately soothed his back, making him shiver involuntarily and feel somewhat unnatural. Zhao Kang noticed his reaction and glanced at the silent Su Shu behind him, a hint of a faint smile in his eyes. If it wasn't the wrong time for teasing, he would really want to praise his woman. Tang Zelen coughed lightly twice, his breath unsteady as he said, "Let's treat the dead horse as a living horse doctor then. People in front retreat first. Give me a dagger, I'll cover the rear." "You're like this, so what rear are you going to cover?" Zhao Kang said disapprovingly. "I've fought with them. We're all military, there's no need for you to cover the rear. Just wait peacefully." Tang Zelen suddenly grabbed Zhao Kang's wrist firmly, frowning. "Trust me, I'll cover your retreat. Give me the dagger, otherwise we're all going to die here." "Impossible." Zhao Kang pulled his hand away from Tang Zelen and looked up at Su Shu. "Miss Su, take good care of your fiancé." "I will," Su Shu said calmly. Hearing this, Tang Zelen was taken aback and wanted to correct Zhao Kang, but the group captain had already risen, ready to lead the careful retreat. The woman's voice behind him sounded very young, but just. He wanted to turn around but couldn't. "Miss, I think you might have mistaken me for someone else. He wasn't her fiancé, he was." Su Shu steadied him, her gaze fixed ahead on the terrifying swarm of snakes. Oddly, in such an extremely dangerous situation, she didn't feel scared. Was it because he was there? He was there, alive in her arms. So Su Shu no longer felt awkward and boldly replied, "I haven't mistaken you, Senior Colonel Tang." "Tang Zelen, eh? What's the likelihood of escaping alive from a horde of venomous snakes? 9 deaths and 1 survival chance enough." Gazing at the mass of serpents coiling in front of her, tongues flicking coldly, Su Shu thought about the very situation Tang Zelen and the others had faced yesterday. An involuntary chill rose from the depths of her soul, filling her limbs and overwhelming her heart with fear. That they could escape from such a predicament was beyond her imagination. Then she remembered, Tang Zelen had used himself as bait to save the other villagers, nearly dying in that gaping fissure, supporting Tang Zelen with trembling hands. If they had arrived just a bit later, or if he had been any less careful, would she have continued to miss him in this life? Tang Zelen, oblivious to why the slender hand on his arm suddenly pressed down hard, winced in pain but bit back the discomfort. "Sorry, did I hurt you?" Su Shu apologized, coming back to her senses. "Tang Zelen, it doesn't matter." Silence from behind. If he could turn around, he would definitely want to see who was the girl behind him. The girl's voice was sweet. He felt sure he had heard it somewhere before, or else where would that faint sense of familiarity come from? From behind, a soft fragrance wound around him. Tang Zelen quietly took a deep breath and silently stifled the unsteady emotions rising within him. For a grown man like him, relying on a woman's embrace was quite unsettling. "Miss, I'm fine, you can let me go. It must be very hard for you." "It's not hard," came a soft reply from behind. "Wait a moment. Once the situation gets out of control, run immediately and don't look back." "And you?" With a faint smile, Tang Zelen said, "With half a life left, I should be able to buy you some time. It's better for one to die than for a group. If you manage to escape, please take care of my brother for me." Yuan Zio, who had been saved after a long stretch of persistence, had already passed out due to relaxation as soon as he was rescued, unaware of the surroundings and what was happening. Su Shu turned her head to look at the young and handsome man who had been rescued first. His complexion was somewhat dark. "Tang Zelen, you really know how to jab at my heart. Are the lives of others something precious, but your own is just cannon fodder? I only care about whether you live or die. I have no interest in others. Mind your own life. You, suddenly choked by a response. Did he really want to see who the girl behind him was? He went through all the women he knew in the vicinity and still couldn't recall who would come to Peng Village to save him. And as if on purpose, the girl behind him refused to show her true face. At this point, he still didn't realize the person behind him was making a fuss, and he still considered himself a group captain leading warriors. Although he didn't know who the girl behind him was, he was sure of one thing: she definitely knew him. Today, he didn't know if he could escape once again from the snakes, but the gentleness behind him suddenly softened his heart, which was as hard as stone. Zhao Kang and all the warriors were tense, ready to confront the snakes or to flee at any moment. If it weren't for the 4 injured they had to carry, it would be one thing, but with them, escaping was very difficult. Any movement could dramatically increase the chance of direct confrontation. After surveying the terrain and determining a retreat path, and under the watchful eyes of the encircling snakes, Zhao Kang's forehead was sweating as he repeatedly simulated the odds of a successful escape route in his mind. They blocked the way down the mountain. Retreating meant unknown dangers of the deep mountains. Going forward was hell. Zhao Kang found that his palms were full of sweat. It wasn't just him. In the silent standoff, everyone was dripping with cold sweat. Su Shu silently drew close to Tang Zelen, subconsciously feeling as if the closer she was to him, the safer she felt. But Tang Zelen felt uncomfortable. That softness pressing against his back somehow made him feel even more uneasy. Intimate yet unfamiliar, Tang Zelen saw that Zhao Kang and his warriors seemed to have come to an agreement. His eyes grew deep, his mind made up. Stealthily, he searched for a small, sharp piece of broken stone from the ground and clutched it in his palm. If the snake swarm got out of control, he could perhaps try one last method. Su Shu saw all his slight movements, and her brows furrowed, a question mark flashing across her mind, wondering why he held a piece of broken stone in his palm. But in a moment, her phoenix eyes dimmed, guessing something. Without any explanation, while he was distracted, she forcefully pried the broken stone from his palm and threw it fiercely to the side. Tang Zelen, if you don't want your life, then give it to me. His body was almost half disabled. What could he possibly do to buy them time? What good was a piece of broken stone? It was of no use, but the sharp edge of that stone, dragged across the skin to create a bleeding cut, would surely suffice. His disregard for his own life made her shiver with anger all over. Tang Zelen frowned. Stop fooling around. What did she think the venomous snakes in front of her were? She hadn't seen how many people had died at their jaws yesterday. The snakes guarding Lingjai ground in between Cliff's Mountain were strange. Zhao Kang and his men had no capability to confront them head-on. If there was one method that could buy them some hope of survival, the scent of living blood could momentarily attract their attention. They learned this from Hunter Zhang yesterday, and it had enabled a few people to barely survive. He didn't know how many people he could save today. Everything depended on fate. The 4 of them had injuries to varying degrees, with dried bloodstains on their bodies. He didn't know if these were the reasons that attracted their return. If he didn't do it, today all of them would die here, none could escape. What's more important, was there a need to choose? But this girl, choosing not to be clever when she should have, happened to guess his intention at this moment. Her actions even startled Zhao Kang into looking back. Zhao Kang glanced at the discarded stone Su Shu had thrown away, then at Tang Zelen, whose face was dark, his eyes thoughtful. In only a moment, he grasped the intricacies. "You are not thinking of bleeding yourself, are you?" Zhao Kang asked, looking dubiously at Tang Zelen's expression. The quick change in his eyes made Zhao Kang raise his eyebrows, understanding in an instant. He said, "That's too dangerous." Tang Zelen replied, "Right now it is the best method." Zhao Kang frowned. Didn't he understand the principle of sacrificing the lesser for the greater? But he could sacrifice himself, not others, especially those he had personally saved. How could he let others go to their deaths? Zhao Kang was not that kind of villain. After a long while, Zhao Kang said, "Then let me try." "No," Tang Zelen quickly objected. "Wait a second." Su Shu suddenly remembered something and said. Following her outcry, Tang Zelen noticed that the snakes in front had suddenly begun to get restless, and he quickly grasped her slender wrist, whispering sharply, "Don't talk, get out of here quickly." The snake swarm was restless, possibly because the little red snake was about to awaken. If evacuation was not timely, the consequences were unimaginable. Zhao Kang also suddenly straightened up, and the warriors in front lightly stepped back, forming a circle in front of the four injured and Su Shu, protecting them within. Tang Zelen told them to hurry, but the girl behind him didn't move. He couldn't help but say in a low voice, "What are you thinking? Move quickly." Behind him, Su Shu lifted her head. "I have vinegar and alcohol in my bag. Do they have any effect on snakes?" Tang Zelen turned his head and could only see her profile. "You have vinegar and alcohol." "Yes, I do," Su Shu said firmly. "Hurry and bring them here." Zhao Kang was blocking their front and also heard Su Shu's words behind him, and hurriedly said, "Miss Su, if you have vinegar, bring it quickly. It might be useful." At this critical juncture, no one expected that Su Shu's backpack would contain vinegar. When she followed them up the mountain, she indeed was carrying a backpack, but no one had asked what was inside, and she did not bother any soldier to carry it up for her until they found the first group of villagers in danger. Only then did she gradually take out some water and food, as well as some tools and ropes that they hadn't thought of at the moment, which she had all along. It was clear that she was a girl with a meticulous mind. But what he had not thought of was that her backpack contained items like vinegar and alcohol. How had she, with such a petite frame, carried it up the mountain? No matter how Su Shu carried it up, at this moment he was very grateful in his heart. Su Shu gently laid Tang Zelen down on the stretcher, turned around, and dragged her backpack from behind, reaching in as if to grab the vinegar and alcohol. Tang Zelen slightly turned his head to see who she really was, but could only see the delicate silhouette of her back. Su Shu had her thoughts for carrying her backpack into the mountains. She didn't know what things were needed for search and rescue in the mountain forests, but among the supplies she had prepared for the apocalypse crisis, there were tools for wilderness survival. She had packed some items that were bulky but light in weight in advance, giving Zhao Kang and the others the impression that she had brought a lot of things. But when it came to actual use, she would directly take out items from her space. In her space, there was plenty of vinegar and alcohol, with the vinegar being more pungent. To avoid too much suspicion, she took out 3 bottles of vinegar and 1 bottle of alcohol. Zhao Kang got hold of the vinegar bottle, bit it open, and a strong sour smell assailed his nostrils. He excitedly said to Tang Zelen, "Vinegar essence, very sour, nothing could be better, they definitely won't want to come near." Tang Zelen nodded. "Surround us with 3 bottles of vinegar essence and see how it works. If not, we'll use fire." "I think it will work." Su Shu also opened a bottle of vinegar and passed it to the outstretched hands of the warrior behind her. "Tang Zelen, do you think this vinegar could be more effective than you hurting yourself to buy time?" Su Shu turned her head and asked him. As Tang Zelen lay on the stretcher, she suddenly turned around, and he finally saw her face clearly. It was her. The snake swarm grew restless, making everyone's nerves tense up as well. Generally, snakes dislike strong, pungent smells, like vinegar and alcohol. Such scents are usually potent enough to make them detour. Zhao Kang and the others had drawn a circle with wine vinegar around them, and then cautiously drew a line with the remaining liquid facing the confronting snake swarm. Starting a fire in the woods is very dangerous and should only be used as a last resort. After everything was ready, they watched nervously at the base of the top-grade blood Ganoderma in the middle of the opposite snake swarm. The little red snake twitched faintly a few times. The mountain forest was silent, and the breathing of the people beside them was clearly audible. The line in front of them was about a large step away from their circle, serving as the first probing line. If this method failed, it would be a matter of kill or be killed. Everyone fiercely gripped their makeshift weapons, which were handy for fighting for their lives. Zhao Kang's tall figure stood in front of the injured Tang Zelen and Su Shu. Zelen was always monitoring the situation of the opposing snake swarm. If possible, try to retreat quietly without meeting their gaze. They move as a group. Understood. They slowly tried to step back together, moving sluggishly, trying to adopt an almost static state. However, no matter how careful they were, it seemed the snake swarm opposite sensed some disturbance, as they all raised their heads and looked around. Phew! Everyone held their breath, not daring to make a sound. Su Shu had already taken 2 daggers from her bag, giving one to Zelen and keeping one for herself. Zelen was somewhat surprised, his eyes crinkled at the corners. "You threw away the stones but handed me a dagger." Su Shu glanced at him, then looked forward again, positioning herself protectively in front of him. She said indifferently, "I'm giving you the dagger to save your life. If you don't cherish it and use it on yourself, I can also try and see what it feels like to feed the snake swarm." Zelen's dark eyes widened in shock. Across from them, some snakes in the swarm suddenly started crawling toward their direction. Su Shu gripped the handle of her dagger tightly. Zhao Kang was also holding a military dagger. His arms splayed protectively as he subconsciously tried to shield Su Shu behind him. Would it work when they reached that line? Would they turn back or continue crawling over? No one knew. While everyone was extremely tense, 2 or 3 gray-green snakes came crawling over. The closer they got, the shallower everyone's breathing became. "They're here." When they reached the line with the strong scent, their heads suddenly swayed to the side. Everyone's eyes brightened. It seemed to work. Su Shu was more anxious than anyone else, with the heavily injured Zelen beside her. After a few wobbles at the line, the 3 snakes crawled away. Phew! Everyone silently breathed a sigh of relief. Damn, that was terrifying. Su Shu unconsciously looked back at Zelen and accidentally locked eyes with a pair of profound black pupils, causing her heart to tremble violently. Those eyes were captivating, filled with inquiry, surprise, and some other inscrutable emotions. "Not good, more are coming. Do we retreat?" A warrior whispered a warning. Zhao Kang said, "Don't move rashly, let's wait and see." They were crawling this way, and any movement from them could infuriate the snakes. It was hard to say what would happen. The second batch of snakes was much larger than the first, but upon reaching that line, they too turned back because they didn't like the irritating scent. A few persistent ones crossed over, but after crawling a bit further, they encountered an even more noxious smell and shook their tails, turning back quickly to flee from the unpleasing ground. As the snake crossed over, it nearly scared the hearts out of everyone present. If one could make it over, then there was nowhere to run, and a bloody slaughter was inevitable. Fortunately, Zhao Kang breathed out softly, not turning his head, and whispered, "Miss Su, we owe you one." "Group Captain Zhao, it seems to work a bit. Can we retreat now?" "The people in the back try moving first. We in the front will hold them off." Thus, the warriors in the last row crouched down cautiously and gently lifted the 4 injured off the ground, pulling them back with slight movements. According to the plan, if they couldn't clear the way in front, they would take a bit more time to detour around. It was still better than a certain death. Because the people in the front were shoulder to shoulder, blocking the view, the subtle retreat of those in the back luckily did not stir up more agitation from the opposite side. Zhao Kang quickly glanced back and saw that the rear had retreated a few meters. Then he hurriedly whispered to Su Shu. "Miss Su, you retreat as well. Together. You go first, we move faster. Okay, be very careful." Once fleeing, she indeed wouldn't be as fast as they were, and of course, she didn't want to be a burden to them. As she stepped back, just about to retreat, suddenly, her eyes inadvertently met those of a snake opposite her. Her heart thumped with a tremor. It was that little red snake that had been coiling at the base of the Lingjai. Su Shu was startled when had it climbed up on top of the Lingjai. It even raised half of its body, head held high, staring straight at her. Staring at her. The thought startled her. Snakes have poor vision, she must be scaring herself. She shifted her gaze away and took a step back. However, even without eye contact, she was somehow aware of the red snake's movements in her peripheral vision. She also clearly heard the sharp intake of breath from Zhao Kang and the others in the front row. As she shifted back, she noticed that the red snake seemed to rise even higher. Around her, all the snakes were slithering on the ground, raising their bodies, but it alone sat proudly atop the plant, like a sovereign high above, gazing down upon its subjects. Su Shu felt a tremor of fear in her heart. Unsure if her movement had drawn its attention, she tentatively moved back half a step. Opposite, the red snake seemed curiously to rise even higher, its head swaying slightly. Even though she couldn't clearly see the snake, Su Shu felt as if its gaze was tightly locked on her. She stood still, took a deep breath, and quietly withdrew the half step she had taken earlier. Suddenly, the red snake seemed to relax a little, sinking lower. Damn it, it was like some sort of twisted fate. She shouldn't have this peculiar feeling. Between the two of them, a silent equilibrium hung like a sword over Su Shu's head. She couldn't advance nor retreat, as the situation tensed up right there. Even Zhao Kang in the front could sense the erratic movements of Su Shu behind him. He lowered his voice to ask, "What's the matter?" "It seems to be watching me," Su Shu whispered back. "Which one?" "The most dangerous one." "The most dangerous, if not the red snake, then who else?" Zhao Kang asked, "Are you sure?" "Yeah." She moved back and it stood to watch. She pulled back and it sank lower, watchful. No matter where she looked, she could feel its gaze on her. Like a wild beast in the mountains eyeing its prey. Had the little red snake marked her as its prey? Su Shu wondered. Su Shu could not determine why the little red snake opposite her took an interest in her. But there was one thing she was certain of. If she moved, the enemy also moved. If she did not move, neither did the enemy. Su Shu pondered quietly for a moment, then observed the situation on the other side again. Though it appeared small, the little red snake seemed to hold a high status among the snake crowd. It raised its fiery red head with pride, flicking its tongue, fixing its gaze on Su Shu's movements, and lying on top-grade Lingjai. It somehow exuded an indescribable air of haughtiness. As if challenging her with its cold gaze, "I see where you can run to." After observing for a while, Su Shu seemed to realize something and turned to speak to Zhao Kang. "Group Captain Zhao, have your men try retreating to the back and see." "What?" "I think that little snake is focusing on me. If I retreat to the back, the snakes might start to get agitated. I'm thinking, why not have your men retreat first to see what happens?" Zhao Kang frowned, lowering his voice. "Miss Su, do you not trust my ability to protect you?" Su Shu looked up. "It's not that I trust you, but the situation is critical now. Please, just listen to my suggestion. I truly think that little snake is focusing on me." Just one snake, why would it only focus on you? We are all its targets. Seeing that she couldn't persuade him, Su Shu changed her approach. Why not let two warriors retreat first and see? So she would stay put while others retreated, and then observe what happened. Saying this, Zhao Kang could not find a reason to refuse and deeply eyed her twice, once again confirming, "Do you really think so?" "Yes, I truly think it's focusing on me." Upon hearing this, Zhao Kang silently moved closer to her. If that snake was focusing on her, wouldn't she be in more danger? Thus he could not retreat yet, so he let others retreat first. The two named warriors quietly moved backward. Su Shu and Zhao Kang intensely watched the activity opposite them. Sure enough, like Su Shu had said, when she did not move, the little red snake still appeared leisurely, watching her. A bizarre standoff. Su Shu felt a storm of frustration rage through her heart. Why was it staring at her? When dozens of people had sequentially retreated to positions behind them, only Su Shu and Zhao Kang were left at the front. What was this situation? Su Shu urged Zhao Kang, "Group Captain Zhao, you retreat as well. If you don't retreat, neither will I. It's too dangerous." Indeed, could it be any more dangerous? Now facing hundreds of venomous snakes, only the two of them stood there, motionless. The others were far behind them, vigilantly staying back to respond at any moment. Su Shu's brows were tightly furrowed as she squinted at the little red snake opposite her, puzzled. The horde of snakes was massive and terrifying, yet because of the presence of the little red snake, they obediently stayed around it. As long as it did not move, none of the other snakes made any motion to crawl forward. A snake king. It was said that some snakes were born with spirit communication abilities. Could it be that this little red snake also possessed such powers? Zhao Kang, beside her, quietly discussed with her, "Let's try moving back together." That sounds good. It was surely better than sitting and waiting for death. Both took a step back simultaneously. Hiss! The sound of countless tongues flickering was chilling to the ears. Su Shu felt a shiver down her spine and resignedly stepped back. Well, it seemed like the one opposite was satisfied. Damn! Did it want only her? Su Shu also didn't know where the fire came from but took a step forward with a swoop. That feeling of satisfaction seemed to become even stronger. Zhao Kang was terrified and grabbed her hard, growling, "Have you lost your mind, charging forward like that?" Su Shu turned her head and said, "Captain Zhao, stop dragging this out, take them and retreat. If we keep delaying, they'll be in even more danger. I understand now, they only want me. You need to go. If you don't leave now, it'll be too late." Zhao Kang looked at her and then at the snakes in front of them, eyeing Su Shu with a hungry gaze. On the young girl's face was a calm openness. The tension and fear from earlier had disappeared, replaced by a suppressed anger. Zhao Kang was uneasy. However, Su Shu said, "Captain Zhao, you know in your heart that even if you stayed, it wouldn't make much of a difference." These words made Zhao Kang feel uncomfortable. He knew that this girl was just trying to provoke him into retreating as soon as possible. Zhao Kang stood his ground and Su Shu frowned. If they continued this stalemate, Tang Zelen's condition would worsen, and the lives of the others would be at even greater risk. She couldn't allow him to stay any longer. Just now, in a flash of inspiration, she had suddenly thought of a way to save them. But that method absolutely could not be revealed in front of others. Zhao Kang had to leave. "Captain Zhao, stop wasting time. If they only want me, your staying will just be sacrificing your life for nothing. It's better to take the others and get them safely down the mountain. Besides, we can't be sure if we'll encounter even more trouble later on." "But—" "No buts, that's settled. I only ask you for one thing, can you promise me that?" "You get out of here, I'll handle this." Zhao Kang's eyebrows furrowed. "Su Shu, you think I'm heading out to die? You're mistaken. I just thought of a way that might let us evade the snake's attack. Zhao Keng gave her a cold glance and said in a deep voice, "If there was a way, you would have said it already. Why wait until now?" How could a young girl be so stubborn? Zhao Keng thought. Su Shu really didn't have time to explain anymore and also lowered her voice, saying, "Fine, if you won't retreat, I'll charge forward." You! Zhao Kang was exasperated. What was she doing, joking with her life at a time like this? He wanted to grab her and forcibly drag her away. But as soon as Su Shu daringly took a step forward, Zhao Kang's face turned pale with fright. All right, Miss Su, don't move. I'm retreating. Retreat quickly." With no other choice, Zhao Kang backed away facing the direction of Su Shu's back. And to his surprise, he discovered that the situation really was as Su Shu had said. As long as she stood there, the snakes on the opposite side had no intention of attacking. It was extremely strange. But to leave her life in danger and escape himself, it was heavy on Zhao Kang's heart, and all the soldiers behind him felt stifled. Zhao Kang retreated but saw Tang Zelen clutching his chest, his face turning ashen, trying to get off the stretcher and move forward, while the warriors beside him kept stopping him. Tang Zelen's complexion was terrifying to behold. "Leave her alone out there." His voice was laced with a cold hardness like shards of ice. "If I didn't retreat, she would have charged forward," Zhao Kang said with restlessness in his heart and an unpleasant tone. Everyone behind Su Shu was staring at her, a group of grown men standing here, yet relying on one woman to stand in front and fight for a chance of survival for them. "I'm going over." Before those 3 words were fully spoken, a hand chopped the back of his neck, and he collapsed into unconsciousness right there. The warriors beneath him looked puzzled at their group captain. Zhao Kang said roughly, "To be entrusted by others is to be loyal." Everyone understood. It must have been Sasha's wish. Alone and unsupported, Sasha had already figured it out during the extremely tense circumstances. If they dared to come over, she would risk it all to try and see if her space could capture them. Sasha's predicament. Apart from moving forward, they must not move backward, or they would provoke the little snake king, and the entire group of snakes would pounce upon them, leaving no one alive. Sasha said, "You guys hurry up and go." Behind her, not a single person was willing to move. A group of men leaving her, a girl in the midst of snakes. "Stop kidding." The standoff lasted a very long time. The little snake king seemed genuinely interested in Sasha, always hovering around to size her up. Why, out of everyone, did the little red snake want to keep her? Could it be because of her spatial ability? Could this little snake king sense space? She wasn't certain whether her guess was correct, but before she could think further, the snake started to move. The atmosphere was tense, like a bowstring pulled to the brink of snapping. Initially, Sasha believed that as long as she didn't move, the snakes wouldn't either. Thus, when she was suddenly encircled in the middle by the pouncing snakes, her mind could only muster 2 words. "Fucking." And at a distance, Tang Zelen, who had passed out for a while and then regained consciousness, and Zhe Keng and the others, could only see a group of snakes swooping down in unison. Before they could make out the details, several hundred snakes were intertwined, forming a wall, blocking them from Sasha. Not good. Tang Zelen, eager to rush over, forgot about his own severe injuries, acted impulsively and fell to the ground, eliciting a heavy grunt from the impact, his face looking dreadful. Sasha was stunned. "What happened to the agreement that you wouldn't move if I didn't?" They suddenly trapped her in the middle so quickly that she didn't even have time to react. Her mind went blank, and in desperation, she didn't stay still but dashed forward with all her might. The only thought in her feverish head was, even if it meant death, she would take her adversary down with her. Yes, that's right. with that arrogant little red snake. Apparently, the Snake King on the other side was also startled by her unexpected action for a moment. Seeing Susha rushing towards it with a dagger in hand and bloodshot eyes, the little Snake King, sitting on Lungja, paused for a moment, then forcefully tapped its tail on the Lungja in an attempt to turn and fly backward. Behind him, a hand fiercely grabbed the tip of its tail. Susha used all her speed and strength to grab it, and as reflex, it turned its head in rage to bite her. But at the very moment, it opened its mouth to bite the back of her hand. Whoosh! It disappeared. The ring on Susha's finger suddenly became as hot as molten iron, and her head throbbed violently. She felt lightheaded and fell to the ground, losing consciousness. Tang Zulun, propped on one arm on the ground, bore the severe pain and lifted his head, just in time to see the wall of snakes blocking him from her collapse loudly and disperse. In no time at all, the swarm of venomous snakes, as though they had never been there, vanished from everyone's sight. Zhekung and his soldiers, who were halfway there, only saw Susha lying on the ground unconscious. They hurried over to check where she had been bitten by the snakes, but after looking all around, they couldn't find any wounds on her body. Zhekung's face darkened. He turned around and shouted, "Quick, down the mountain." Yes. The warriors lifted Tang Zulun back onto the stretcher. Without the obstruction of the snakes, everyone rushed down the mountain at top speed. Zhekung, carrying Susha on his back, ran desperately down the mountain. With no snake bites on her body, yet unconscious on the ground, he couldn't be certain whether it was due to snake venom or some other reason. They needed to get down the mountain quickly to find a medical team to examine her. Tang Zulun lay on the stretcher, allowing the young warriors to carry him down the mountain at breakneck speed. The tree canopy above him flew past rapidly. The sky was gray and dim, much like his current mood, somewhat oppressive. That girl. It felt as though a 1,000-pound stone was pressing down upon his chest. The situation took a dire turn. The outbreak was too sudden. No one noticed. After the snakes scattered, why did the top-grade Lungja disappear into thin air? No one paid attention. Just as magically as they had appeared, they vanished just the same. Only one person stopped suddenly while running down the mountain and looked back at the summit. Since then, deep within Peng Mountain, no swarms of snakes were ever seen again, and the tailies of the Lungja that couldn't be picked slowly became an even more miraculous legend. Susha remained unconscious. The doctors from Peng Village's medical team couldn't identify what the problem was. Everyone rescued from the mountain had been properly settled, one after another. Tang Zulun, worried about Susha's condition, was nonetheless pressed down onto a hospital bed by the head of the medical team. Group Captain Tang, you should worry about your own injuries first. If it weren't for your skin and muscles holding you together, you'd have fallen apart by now. Tang Zulun had no choice but to agree. It wasn't that serious. However, he no longer made any difficult requests of the medical staff, only instructing them to let him know if there was any news about the girl next door. The nurse said, "Of course, Group Captain Tang, we will keep an eye on your fiancé's condition. Please now cooperate with our treatment." As she spoke, the anesthesia needle was already in place. Yet another person referred to her as his fiancée. Tang Zulun didn't have the chance to clarify before his consciousness gradually faded. The head doctor of the medical team stood in front of the operating room, unable to believe what he was seeing. To have held on until now with such injuries, it's truly. What it truly was, the doctor didn't say. Meanwhile, Tang Zulun's surgery was inside the medical tent. And in another tent, Susha's head physician was searching desperately for a way to wake her up, sweating profusely. But no matter how hard she tried, Susha remained unconscious, never waking up. Upon returning to the village, Jia Kung handed Su Sha over to the medical team and then immediately led his soldiers on another rescue mission elsewhere, leaving only one soldier behind to explain the situation to the doctors. The doctor asked many questions, but the soldier couldn't clarify any further, recounting only everything he had witnessed. But it was as if he had said nothing at all. The doctor's eyebrows knitted together. There are no signs of snake bites on her body, no symptoms of having inhaled poisonous substances or gases, and aside from exhaustion, all her vital functions are normal. Why won't she wake up? A nurse asked from the side, should we administer an IV? Go ahead, focus on replenishing her strength and reducing inflammation. The doctor wrote a prescription. The nurse administered the injection, and Su Sha, with her eyes tightly closed, lay on the hospital bed, turned away, oblivious to her surroundings. Peng Village continued its tense disaster relief efforts, dealing with food and water, medical aid, and search and rescues. Everyone was fighting against time and disaster. Time ticked away, second by second. After an indeterminate amount of time, a black luxury car hurried into Peng Village. The car stopped abruptly, and Shen Han, with a grave expression, got out, slammed the door behind him, and bypassed the passing crowd to head towards the Red Cross medical team's location. He reached out and grabbed a white-clad nurse, asking in a deep voice, "Hello, please, is there a girl named Su Sha here?" That nurse carrying medicine thought for a moment. "Su Sha? I'm not sure, but Group Captain Tang's fiancée's last name is Su. I don't know if that's the person you're looking for. There, she's in that tent." "All right, thank you." The moment Shen Han heard Su Sha's location, he hurriedly let go of the nurse and moved forward. However, after taking only a few steps, he suddenly realized what he had just heard, turned around, and in 2 or 3 long strides blocked the nurse's path again. His eyebrows furrowed slightly. "What did you just say? Who's fiancé?" The nurse was taken aback, saying, "Group Captain Tang's why?" She hadn't misspoken. Hadn't everyone been saying that? The man's dark eyes suddenly darkened. His lips pressed tightly as he turned to see Su Sha. Before the sickbed, Su Sha's face was pale and delicate, like a flower silently growing on the edge of a cliff, her fragility carrying an undercurrent of unyielding tenacity. Shen Han found a chair and sat down beside her. The medicine in the IV bottle had already gone down by more than half. He looked down at her slender wrist and gently covered it with his hand. Her wrist was ice cold, touching it pained his heart. With the warmth of his palm, the man helped to warm her cold medicine, occasionally caressing her pale cheek, a complex glimmer in his eyes. After asking the doctor, aside from her unending unconsciousness, her body wasn't in serious trouble, and the heart Shen Han had been carrying the whole way finally settled down. But her continuous unconsciousness wasn't an acceptable situation either. Outside the medical tent, noises buzzed and hummed. He sat for a while and then took out his phone to make a call. Another batch of disaster relief supplies for E Province. On the other end, his secretary, afraid of misunderstanding, asked for confirmation. "President, do you want to send the same batch again?" "That's fine." Shen Han was direct. Driving there, seeing everything with his own eyes, he understood the true situation of the disaster area. If not for Su Shu, his involvement in disaster relief would have been motivated only by PR considerations and a certain sense of responsibility. Having seen it for himself, however, he felt the need to double the relief supplies. Even so, he knew that what they could provide was still not enough, but at the very least, it conveyed a stance within the business community. How other companies would decide wasn't within his range of consideration. Su Shu breathed lightly. Shen Han simply held her hand and accompanied her. There were other patients being treated around, yet it was uncertain if it was due to the disaster or because Shen Han, dressed in his suit and sharp attire, was there. All around it was very quiet, except for the occasional medical staff coming in to check. Hardly anyone was talking. And Shen Han didn't care about how he was perceived by the people around him. Once he had calmed down, his brows furrowed slightly. Although he wanted to ignore it, what the nurse said still left a mark in his heart. Whose fiancé is she? And who is her fiancé? No one knew better than him how Su Shu had been living these past few years. To say she was someone else's fiancé was preposterous. A muted anger stirred within Shen Han, suppressed by his cold exterior. He looked up at the remaining medicine in the bottle, just as a nurse came in. Shen Han turned his head and asked, "Will there be more after this bottle is done?" "Oh yeah, there are 2 more bottles," said the nurse. "Could she be transferred to another hospital like this?" The nurse was about to insert a needle into a young man and replied crisply through her mask, "Some patients do indeed need to be transported, and we have already made contact with the hospitals in the city and county. They will send an ambulance over. As for whether she can be transferred, ask the doctor when he comes by later." The implication was that she, a nurse, couldn't decide. "When will the doctor come?" After giving the injection and removing the needle, the nurse adjusted her mask and came over to check on Su Shu's condition. "In a while, he's treating another patient over there. Are you a family member?" Shen Han looked up, considering his relationship with Su Shu, and nodded slightly. With no other relatives left, as the person closest to her, it seemed appropriate. The nurse said, "Then, when we bring over the fiancé of Miss Su, you probably know him too. Later, we'll have to ask you to help take care of him as well since we're short-staffed. Call us if you need anything." Shen Han's black eyes narrowed slightly, asking him to take care of who. "Wait a moment." Someone outside called the nurse, and she quickly left, holding her medical tray, failing to notice how the man's face turned icy behind her. It was already the second time. He had heard the reference to her fiancé for the second time. His brows were knitted tightly, and a swell of frustration seemed to rise within Shen Han's chest. The nurse who said she would have Tang Zelen sent over for Shen Han to help take care of him was notified after she went back. All post-surgery matters concerning Tang Zelen had been taken over directly by the provincial military region. After all, his identity was special, and when he was rescued, Zhao Kang had already instructed the guards to contact the superiors and establish communication with the B province. Afterwards, news came that someone would arrive to pick him up and transfer him to another hospital. Shen Han knew nothing of this. After Su Shu had her second dose of medicine administered, Shen Han walked out. Surrounding him were either the military officers of the rescue team or medical staff in white coats. To him, a disaster was just a news item on TV, just a welfare document that needed his signature. Witnessing firsthand the pain and panic of people in the midst of a disaster was an unprecedented experience for Shen Han. This indescribable experience, made all the more poignant because of Su Shu, who was also injured in the disaster, left a deep impression. Born with a silver spoon in his mouth and never wanting for anything, Shen Han now saw for the first time how insignificant people are in the face of disaster. He was accustomed to commanding authority at the negotiation table, but in this tiny place that couldn't be any smaller, he couldn't find his own place. It seemed as if between heaven and earth, he was suddenly exiled to the fringes, his vision filled with the intensely determined faces of dirty yet resilient rescue officers. They ran around the people, building a strong barrier for those alive and a glimmer of hope for those in despair. Shen Han's mood was exceptionally heavy. He turned around, glancing back through the tent curtain. He couldn't help but wonder why she had gone to such lengths to travel from City C to this small mountain village. She was clearly not one to frequent unfamiliar places, so why had she come here? Shen Han deliberately ignored another obvious reason. Tang Zelen, a man he had seen once, who was special in Shushu's eyes. He couldn't understand exactly when and where had Su Shu, who had always been by his side, met another man. In his heart, that extremely uncomfortable feeling surfaced again. After much contemplation, Shen Han took out his phone from his pocket once more. He dialed, but there was no signal. In the mountains, the signal was intermittent. After trying several times, he finally got through. Send a plane over and arrange a VIP ward at a tertiary hospital in the provincial city. After hanging up the phone, Shen Han's gaze was resolute. He couldn't leave Su Shu here. She had to remain somewhere he could see her, just like before. Not long afterwards, two aircraft almost simultaneously arrived above Peng Village. One was a military helicopter, the other was a private plane. One came to pick up the critically wounded Tang Zelen. The other came for Su Shu, who was still unconscious. Zhao Kang completed the handover with the personnel from the military after explaining the situation. Things on Su Shu's end were much simpler. Shen Han did not need anyone to explain anything to him. He only wanted one thing: to take Su Shu away. Behind him was a top-notch medical resource ready to treat Su Shu. And when the doctor from the medical team learned of his plan to take Su Shu to a tertiary hospital in the provincial city, they fully supported the idea. During this time, the doctor asked Shen Han to also help transport a patient in urgent need of surgery to the hospital for emergency treatment. Shen Han nodded. The village chief's wife, Feng Hua, who had been taking care of Zai since Su Shu entered the mountains with the rescue team, brought Zai over. Mr. Shen, Miss Su has not woken up yet, so I'm entrusting Zai to you. Please take good care of her. Shen Han looked down at the timid little girl leaning against Feng Hua's leg, sneaking glances at him with eyes filled with restraint and fear. Leave her to me, don't worry, he said, looking at Feng Hua. Feng Hua sighed in acknowledgement. Turning around and crouching down, she said to Zai, Zai, your aunt is sick now and this uncle is going to take her to get treatment. Do you recognize him? Zai looked up at Shen Han next to her, then shifted her gaze back to Feng Hua's eyes. After a moment, she nodded her head. She had seen this uncle before, and she knew her aunt wasn't so happy when she saw him. Seeing her nod, Feng Hua felt a stone lift from her heart. She was genuinely worried that Zai wouldn't recognize him, and who knew whether this man could be trusted. However, Feng Hua wasn't without experience. Shen Han was sharply dressed and handsome, and to treat Miss Su, he even sent a private plane to pick up the patient. She had never seen a private plane in her life and had her eyes open today. Such a person, if you were to say he harbors any designs on Su Shu, it doesn't seem likely in any way. With Zai safe and sound, she could at least account for Su Shu. Just like that, Zai was taken into the cabin in the embrace of Shen Han amid the roar of the propellers. As the military officer who came to pick up Tang Zelen was about to board the helicopter, Zhao Kang suddenly remembered something important he hadn't mentioned. Oh, right, Staff Officer Chen, there's one more thing related to him. His fiancée wasn't bitten by a poisonous snake. She's physically unharmed but still unconscious, and her family has decided to take her back to B Province, he said. The person receiving them, Chen Cheng, was slightly taken aback and asked, Fiancé? Yes, Miss Su insisted on going into the mountains with us to search and rescue. It was fortunate we had her. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been able to find Senior Colonel Tang and the rest, said Zhao Kang. Does he know about this? Chen Cheng wondered, rather surprised. He hadn't heard that the Tang family's heir, a formidable tiger of a soldier, had already gotten engaged to someone. Could it be a private matter? Zhao Kang, an outsider, naturally didn't understand Tang Zelin's circumstances and was also oblivious to what it meant for them to send a plane for one person. Senior Colonel Tang knows. He made special instructions to the nurse before his surgery. Chen Cheng thought for a moment, then nodded. All right, I understand. Thank you, Group Captain Zhao. No need to mention it. As Zhao Kang was about to leave, Chen Cheng suddenly called him back and took out a piece of paper to write down a string of telephone numbers, handing it over to Zhao Kang. Please give this to the family of the girl over there. They can contact me if anything comes up. Having successfully rescued Tang Zelin from the deep mountains, no matter what, it was a favor owed to the Tang family, and he felt it prudent to keep an eye on it. As for Group Captain Zhao in front of him, they were all part of the military. Naturally, there would be times when they would meet in the future, and he believed the Tang family's commander would also remember the favor. Sure, don't worry about it, Zhao Kang accepted the note. The military helicopter soon took off, roaring as it carried Tang Zelin away from Peng Mountain, heading back to B Province. Before Shen Han's plane departed, Zhao Kang, diligently fulfilling his duty, handed the telephone number left by Chen Cheng to Shen Han and explained the reason. The piece of paper with Chen Cheng's telephone number became a weight in Shen Han's deeply inscrutable eyes. After Zhao Kang, busy with disaster relief, handed it over, he left. Until the plane took off, Shen Han continued to scrutinize the piece of paper. Unconscious, yet still thinking of leaving contact information. Turning his head, his gaze traveled through the plane's window to the outside, where clouds were thick and fog-like. After a long contemplation, his distinctively jointed fingers crumpled the paper into a ball and tossed it into a cup of water. In a while, the numbers on the paper slowly blurred in the water until they disappeared. The best hospital, the best specialists. Shen Han's care for Su Shu was meticulous elite treatment, undeterred even if using these resources would alarm his family. He could not accept the doctor's response. Unknown cause, unable to awaken. If one expert wasn't enough, then two. If two were insufficient, then call for even more skilled ones. What is this so-called unexplained slumber? Is she dead or in a vegetative state? They had to give him an explanation. However, everyone around Shen Han could clearly see his attitude. Regardless of the explanation, what he wanted was for the girl lying in the hospital bed to wake up. Shen Han's suit jacket was draped over the back of the chair next to the high-end hospital bed. He sat there, legs crossed, staring intently at Su Shu on the bed. He had already arranged for 2 top-notch nannies to take care of Su Shu's niece Xia at his private villa. Whatever he could do for her, he had it thoroughly planned out. And yet, Shen Han still felt a sense of inexplicable irritation congealing in his heart, unable to dissipate. Outside the ward, Zhang Meili, in a new Chanel suit, stood elegantly outside the door, peering in through the window. Her beautiful face shadowed with a hint of chill. In the depths of her eyes, a fire of inexplicable emotion was gathering. So he really was here, guarding Su Shu. Her hand clutching the designer bag tightened fiercely, the doorknob right in front of her eyes. With her status as the chosen young madam of the Shen family, she could very well press down the handle and enter. But she restrained herself again and again, telling herself when she could no longer bear it. A little impatience spoils great plans, and continued to exercise patience. Minutes later, she took a deep breath, turned and walked away, arriving quietly and leaving without a trace. What she wanted was not a momentary victory. She wanted the title of the Shen family's young madam firmly placed upon her head. Shen Han might not like her now, but she was confident that he would in the future. But she would not allow him to like anyone else, especially if that someone else was her, Su Shu. Ever since school days, She had countless admirers, but ironically, the two men she took a liking to and thought were decent both had connections with Su Shu. Ever since she appeared before Shen Han, he had declined her invitations several times because of Su Shu. This was something Jiang Meili could not swallow. Just wait and see who will win in the end. Shen Han was hers, the Shen family's and the Jiang family's precious daughter, Jiang Meili's. And what was Su Shu in comparison? Outside the hospital, the driver opened the car door and she got in, simmering with anger. The driver asked Miss where to. To the Shen family's old residence. Understood. The car slowly drove away. Inside the ward, Shen Han's secretary entered through the door. President, there's news from the United States. We have found a suitable specialist. Shen Han raised his dark eyes, then make arrangements for immediate departure. Right away. Before leaving, the secretary inadvertently glanced at the girl, sleeping unknowingly on the bed. This girl was truly special in President Shen's heart. Soon Shen Han's phone rang. He looked at the unconscious Su Shu and got up to take the call outside the ward. Hello, Dad. Whatever was said on the other end, Shen Han's expression suddenly darkened. After a long time, he responded indifferently. Fine, I will come home for dinner tonight. Ending the call, he stood in the corridor for a moment to ease the somber expression on his face before turning and entering back into the room. To his surprise, the girl in the hospital bed had opened her eyes. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and like the video and comment down if anything wrong in the story, and if have any suggestion to a new novel or want next part of any series, comment down. Our target is to get 1K subscriber. There will be SUPRISC for all of you. Stay tuned.